follow that up with a design. And we've been working, and when I speak about design, we've been working with two major partners. We're working with ITU out of the UN, and we've been working with NRD security firm to help us with the design and further establishment of all of the technical infrastructure for the national cert. So we're currently in the establishment phase. We've completed the assessment, we've completed the design, and what's included in design? Design is across people, process, and technology. I'm going to put a shameless plug in here. The CERT is currently recruiting. We have open positions available in the CERT, so you can certainly look out for those advertisements, and we'll be happy to have qualified people join the national CERT team. So moving on to the design phase of it. From a technology standpoint, you certainly need to understand what is a CERT of this size that will serve a island state. What are the needs? We define our technical criterias, and we've already made some progress with our procurement and laid out the full design from where we are now to what we intend to have established second quarter of next year. And lastly, we're looking at improvement. So once the CERT has already been established, second quarter of next year, I hope I said next year, we will move into looking at what works, does this fit, revise our strategy, and then look into improving our service offering. So why is this important to establish a national CERT? I mentioned before that trust is important. The CERT serves as a trusted focal point. It is a body and agency that coordinates cybersecurity response to cybersecurity attacks. And it supports not just the government, but it also supports the private sectors. Another key benefit of the CERT, it's designed to build capacity. It is designed to build national capacity. So we're here today having this webinar and we're talking about cybersecurity awareness is because we want to make sure that we're sharing information, providing education. We also develop the incident management framework, and those are things that will come as a part of our service offerings to our constituents, as well as providing CyberWatch. So let's talk a little bit about the national strategy. I mentioned to you earlier that we did a series of assessment in order to inform not only the establishment of the CERT, but also to inform the development of the national strategy. So the strategy sets out strategic principle guidelines and objectives, and specifically to our national strategy, we've already identified 15 objectives that we intend to implement over the course of now and 2026. So what are some of the objectives, the 15 objectives that I mentioned? So the strategic area one speaks to cybersecurity governance and framework, and it includes 4 key objectives. The first is the CERT, the establishment of the CERT, and making sure that the CERT serves as the national authority for cybersecurity in the country. Also making sure that as we discuss cybersecurity initiatives, that we have an interagency body that provides that governance for the CERT. Having local governance framework that supports the CERT, and lastly, having international cooperation and support. The second strategic area looks into incident response, prevention, and response. It's the fundamental CERT services. And this really looks at what are the services we need to support our local constituents. Communication and cooperation platforms, and incident categorization. So we have incident, and they will span from variety of types of incidents and severities of incidents, and making sure that we have plans that will manage escalation of incidents to manage crisis in the country. The third strategic area speaks to regulation framework to support critical infrastructure. Many of you may know or may not know that currently we have not defined what is critical to us through legislation. And one thing that this strategy wants to do, this cybersecurity strategy, wants to do is define what is critical to us so that we can best protect it. The other is mapping critical information infrastructure. And this is similar to objective one, is you cannot protect what you do not know. But The most exciting objectives for me and most exciting today is the awareness and building skills and building capacity objectives. So we want to make sure that we are creating a society that is cybersecurity aware. We want to make sure that our professionals have the skills not only to do their job, but to properly perform in a modern digital society. And lastly, we want to make sure that we have cybersecurity awareness, but also education at every level of education in the Bahamas, and that's from pre-K and to tertiary level education. And lastly, we cannot leave without talking about law enforcement. How do we manage cyber crimes? So making sure that we have a robust enough cybersecurity framework to support cyber crime in the country. Also, in order for us to do that, we need to make sure that our law enforcement body has the specific and appropriate education to support the framework, the very framework that we need. The third and final assessment that we did, and I wanted to dive into, was the cybersecurity capacity maturity model assessment. And this framework helps to tell us our maturity level, like I said before, what works, what doesn't work, and how do we need to improve those. And it's captured over 5 domains: cybersecurity policies and strategy, cybersecurity culture and society, building cybersecurity knowledge and capacity, legal and regulatory framework, and standards and technology. But today I'm mainly going to talk about two. I'm going to talk about dimension 2 and dimension 3. So we've gone over this in detail. So we're really looking at cybersecurity culture and society. And most important to me today in Cybersecurity Awareness Month is building cybersecurity knowledge and capacity. So let's look at some of the results of our current state. So when we look at the domain 2, cybersecurity culture and society, we see that we're at startup phase. And startup means that it's an ad hoc, we have no repeatable process. The process for this isn't defined. So when we think about cybersecurity mindset in the country, we're just started. We recognize based on our assessment that lots of people do not have a working knowledge of cybersecurity in the country. For domain area 2.2, trust and confidence in online services. I find that this is a little mixed in that we may have trust and confidence in online services that may be global to us, but we may not necessarily have trust and service to local online services. And these are some of the conversations that came up in during the assessment period. But we do see an uptick on literacy, and certainly we see an uptick on education in the country. Case in point, we know that the University of the Bahamas is launching their program in cybersecurity, and that certainly adds value and will improve these numbers as time goes by. D 2.3 is understanding personal information. And if you notice at this level, we're still at startup maturity, meaning that our digital citizens don't have an appreciation for how to protect their personal information online, or making sure that they're applying the appropriate amount of security to personal identifiable information. I can share tons of stories about entering to a store and having someone ask for more information than is necessary to make a purchase. And I'm sure many of you can agree that that has happened to you probably yesterday. Okay. The dimension 3 speaks to cybersecurity knowledge and capabilities, sorry, and I'll dive into the results promptly. So this is a little bit more promising because it highlights the knowledge and capabilities within the country. And you would have seen from the first domain that I showed you that this is an area where we have a little bit more repeatable process, a little bit more maturity. So initiative by the government. Obviously, by extension, you notice that I'm here as the CERT manager, and the government has engaged stakeholders as well as initiate the establishment of the national CERT. And you can see that this is now at a formative stage. I am aware, and this came out quite a bit during our assessment period that we see more maturity with private sector organizations. So mainly in the financial sector, we see more growth where these organizations that may be governed by or regulated by the central bank and other entities, or maybe their parent companies, they have stronger, more mature cybersecurity programs within their organizations, and they're mandated to provide cybersecurity awareness and training. As far as cybersecurity education goes, we're seeing that smaller organizations, the schools, tertiary level schools, are offering courses on certification courses. Or like I mentioned before, the University of the Bahamas is also improving their cybersecurity operations and offerings. So I'm going to dive into why this is important and why I showed you those numbers and how that correlates into my overall presentation. So digital literacy is important to me. And I mentioned to you is making sure that every user has the ability to appropriately use digital technology and communication tools. And appropriate, when I say that, means using it well, but using it securely. One of the important things to note is that cybersecurity literacy, we are not all created equal. And there are groups and bodies that we have the responsibility of also protecting when we talk about literacy in the country. And this is one of the reasons having this event is so important to not only myself, but it's important for the CERT to host events like this. So let's talk about the digital citizens that we see and who may be underserved and need additional attention. Think about your senior citizens. I had the privilege of having a senior parent and an older parent. And one of the things I knew instantly was that one, she was not engaged with technology. But even if she were to be engaged with technology, I would have to protect her similarly as I would protect a child, simply because I wanted to make sure that I won't expose her to unnecessary risk. The second point is protecting children and people with disabilities, making sure that we create spaces in our country for both children and people with disabilities. And lastly, understanding who are underserved as digital citizens, who don't have access to digital literacy, as well as the people who don't have access to digital assets. I mentioned earlier about protecting children online. This is particularly dear to my heart because I recognize that we are potentially creating spaces for children to have entertainment, to be as a distraction for them, so that we are allowed to do some other works. I know this firsthand that every time I'm in the grocery store, there's a child in the cart and they have their cell phone in their hand and they're very savvy. They're accessing their own shows and music. But one of the things that we're not doing on the offset is protecting our children. I mentioned earlier about cyber proofing. Similarly to protecting and proofing your home, you need to make sure that you're protecting and proofing the digital space that you allow your children to enter. So monitoring their viewing habits. And this starts from early. You want to keep eye on what sites they're viewing and making sure that you're protecting them fully. You want to check online content. You want to check age rating for the sites that your children are using. You want to have a continuous open dialogue with your children about security. And I know we talk a lot about stranger danger, but it's important to make sure that we move that conversation to stranger danger also online. You want to be setting privacy settings for not only your children, but also yourself. I think sometimes as nurturers, when we have the opportunity to protect others, we tend to pay more attention to it. And so I'm calling on you to make sure that you spend the time on the apps that your children are using and encourage critical thinking. You want to tell them if this doesn't feel safe. If someone is asking you for information, be sure to ask me first. And as I've said before, if the content appears not to be secure, you want to block use for your children in order to protect them. So what is cyber safety? In the same vein that we protect our households that we protect our house by making sure the doors lock, that we have a security system, that we have cameras. It's the same way we want to protect our digital assets. So we must protect it with the same diligence. So, how can we better protect ourselves online? I've said a lot today. I've asked you to not only protect your children, but protect yourself. I've shared some information with you on the status of our maturity in the country and where we are, and how it's important that we recognize that it is our joint responsibility to improve cybersecurity in the country. But I wouldn't leave without just giving you a few tips on how to better protect yourself online. So you want to protect your networks, and this is your home network. And if you are happen to be an IT professional, you want to make sure that your organization has a protected network. But you also want to be lobby and an advocate for protection and cybersecurity. So if you see something, say something. That doesn't mean that you're a part of IT. If you recognize risk in an area, in any area where it's going to put your information at risk, you want to make sure you say something. You want to stay up to date. Make sure that you stay up to date with information, but also that you're updating your application and your devices to ensure that you're getting the latest and greatest and most secure applications. If you connect to it, protect it. I mentioned earlier that while there are many people on the internet, the information and the access to cybersecurity literacy isn't true for everyone. So I'm calling on you to know that you want to promote things like antivirus protection, not only on your computer, but you also want to promote that for your phone. Many of us forget that our smartphones are our computer. And you want to make sure that you're using things like multi-factor authentication on your devices to add extra layer of protection for you and for your family. As mentioned to you before, this month we're celebrating Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I am happy to be here, and I'm happy that you've joined us here today. And we will see more of me as we continue to establish the national cert and want to make sure that we're continuing to build trust and share information with you. Thank you. At this time, I'll take any questions you may have. Levan? Do we have any questions from the audience?
Good morning. Hi, Sumitra. This is Anishka Poleg, work with the Digital Transformation Unit Change Management Practitioner. We have a few questions that have been sent in. I would like to ask on behalf of our viewing and listening audience. Our first question: is there currently an agency or body for parents to reach out to for more information about how to keep their child or children safe online?
Agency in the Bahamas, I don't know of any. So there's currently no local agency, though there are tons of resources online that provide information related to how to protect your children and your family. We will be sharing some resources at the end of the webinar on some of the links that you can access. So watch out for that, and you can take a snapshot of that with just some resources that we thought would be helpful for you. So look out for that at the end of this event.
Thank you. So, to our participant that sent that question, you can give us the feedback. We hope that answer helped you. We have another question, Sumitra. It's coming in from another participant. Do you, Sumitra McKinney, CERT Manager of the Bahamas, foresee cybersecurity tips being taught in schools? And I know you shared about you be having some new programs coming up, but in general in the schools, do you foresee those cybersecurity tips coming forward in the curriculum?
That's the plan. That's the plan. So if you notice in the strategy objectives that I shared with you, one of the key objectives that we have, I'm guessing, I think it's objective 11, we speak to making sure that cybersecurity awareness and education is taught in school at all levels of education. So yes, the short answer is yes. And the CERT will help to drive those initiatives.
Thank you so much for that response. We hope that helped as well. To the person that asked that question, you can give us your feedback on that response. We have one final question in before we wrap up the Q&A for your segment, Demetria. The question is, in your presentation, you mentioned that the CERT is a national focal point. When should how can I reach out to them, the national CERT?
We will start with the when. The CERT is currently in its establishment phase. I mentioned earlier that we did the assessment and we designed, and now we're in the establishment phase. So we're doing the work to establish the CERT, and we won't be offering services until the end of second quarter of next year, 2023. So that is the when you will be able to reach us and you'll be able to have services from us. Also, how? Well, we'll have tons of communication channels. One way would be through our website. That's not yet posted, but will be done in short order. And you'll be able to not only get additional information on the project, but also just sharing tips and tricks on cybersecurity in general.
Thank you, and we're definitely looking forward to all of that and more from the CERT. Very proud of all of you. So before we transition into our next speaker, wonderful presentation as always, Demetria McKinney, National CERT Manager. We do have a quick poll. So for those of us that were paying such close attention to the entire presentation, if you can quickly respond to the poll question, that will help us transition into our next speaker and to make sure that you are definitely engaged with all that's going on within this segment. And we can see the responses coming in. Thank you so much for your participation. We really appreciate it.
So we're preparing now for our second speaker, Mr. Angus Smith, who's our guest speaker today from CERT Trinidad and Tobago. Angus, I see you're all ready and set up. You ready to go? Thank you, and we welcome you here in the Bahamas, and thank you for joining us. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and again, thanks to Demetria for inviting me and the CSIT Bahamas and the CIT Bahamas. It's very nice to be here and again to be part of this journey with you all. Trinidad and Tobago having been on us being on a similar journey, so I could relate to some of the measures and initiatives that the Demetria has to ensure that Bahamas is safe. So with that being said, again, as I said, good morning. My name is Angus Smith. I'm the manager of the Trinidad and Tobago Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, or CSIT. I've been the manager for the past maybe 7 years. So you could go ahead. I think you all have the presentation. You could put it up, or you want me to share it?
Hello, Mr. Smith, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. All right, you're seeing the screen?
You can go ahead. We're able to see your screen.
Okay, good. All right, so again, all right, good morning, everyone. So I'm just here to talk a little bit about cybersecurity awareness again, and based on the theme of your session today, protecting digital citizens. We'd just like to kind of look at things that may be able to help citizens in the context of cybersecurity and protecting yourself from these threats and issues that you might encounter. Okay, so just a quick agenda. This might be kind of keep this just a generalized way that we're going to function today. Um, I'll just talk a little bit about the Trinidad and Tobago suit, and then we'll talk about some threats, some thoughts that we have, some scams, and maybe some issues that you'll encounter, and then maybe look at ways to protect yourself. So I'll try not to be too lengthy. All right, this is just the suit Trinidad and Tobago, and just quickly understanding what we're about. Similarly to the suit of Bahamas, we're really about protecting the nation critical infrastructure, ensuring that we have proper incident response management, and to promote sustainable development in Trinidad and Tobago in that context. You would see suits across the world have similar themes, they have similar missions, similar visions, that kind of thing, but the context really is to protect the nation in essence and protect the citizens, most importantly. In our case, our mission, we do it through training, awareness, education, research, and collaboration. So some of these services that you're trying to make um, would issue to its constituents, alerts, warnings, incident response, awareness building, education and training, security audits and assessments. We do business continuity planning and business continuity disaster recovery planning and business continuity management and vulnerability analysis and handling. And that's just some of the services that we do. You see policy development, threat intelligence. So you'd see with the advent of your national cert, you'll see that they would start with some basic services, but then they could get eventually down into a lot more expansive services to be able to better serve you all. So in essence, what Symmetry and her team is doing is really going along a track that has been again traversed by a number of certs, and again, Trinidad being one of them, and we see that you all are going in a very nice direction in essence. So that's just a little bit about that. So that being said, I'll start to get into some of the threats that you would have encountered, and mostly from a Trinidad perspective, you see they cannot be these threats would kind of be similar across the world in essence, and when you look at it, but this is more so from a Trinidad perspective. Um, and some of these threats that we have seen here in Trinidad would be malware, ransomware. We see social engineering, a lot of phishing, email phishing. You'll see these scams, imposter scams. You'll see a number of things where, I sure a lot of you may have encountered some of these events. Malicious insiders, that's persons who within your workplace would be either disgruntled or have some kind of malicious intent and would sabotage or interfere with your information systems or steal your data and just steal your data. Things like data leakage. And then at least within recent times, we have seen less and less of it, but hacking or hacktivism would have been something that has plagued us a little bit ever so often. So I just wanted to say, look at how or where do these threats or attacks come from? And you would see it's a very wide scope of different vectors in essence you could use to attack a system. And again, within your environment and within your country, you have to look at all these areas. And Symmetry was talking about critical infrastructure and how you want to protect critical infrastructure. And at the end of the day, that's one of the more important sectors or entities you have to look at is all your critical entities and enable you to protect them. And that would go across a wide array of, you would see it from virtualization to hacktivism. You see these vectors would impact your information systems, your banking, your finance, and it comes from different places. Mobile, you would see from emails, from botnets, from lack of cybersecurity professionals where that resource issue would come into play. Social networking, you would see unpatched software. So a lot of these little areas that you see here can be used to attack your critical information systems and again put you as a digital citizen or using digital services at risk to being attacked in essence. So they really cover a wide area of things that you would have to protect yourself against. And again, it's really having that cyber hygiene and trying to do the right thing in a sense. So again, just a little bit about ransomware, and a lot of you may know. I don't know the level of ransomware attacks that has been, or the Bahamas has experienced over time. Trinidad, we occasionally have, and you may in the news, if you pay attention to some of the news, especially coming out of Trinidad, that we have had attacks, especially for want of a better one, massy stores in essence, um, recently got attacked by ransomware, and that causes you to now have to either pay a ransom, or sometimes even if you do pay the ransom, you don't get back access to your files, and then eventually, like even as what has been alleged in the context of massy stores in Trinidad and Jamaica, that their information still ends up on the dark net, even though you may or may not pay. So in some cases, and you see in the United States, and you see in different companies who have been attacked, even though they do pay the ransom, they will encounter something that they call double jeopardy, in essence that you pay and try to get back your data, and then they still release it on the dark web, still putting your citizens and your personal information and even company information at risk. So again, it's still something you have to protect yourself against, because it can really cause a organization significant embarrassment, and can cause you to have, there's a lot of fallout, a cost to having to protect yourself, having the loss of your information that could cause you serious, whether it's monetary and psychological issues. So you could really have to look at it differently. Phishing, one of the vectors that ransomware uses or malware would infiltrate a system would really be through phishing, and phishing comes from either email systems or or various or persons pretending to be something else. And most likely to send you an email pretending to be whether or not, and you could get it from different ways, either spear phishing, which could either target a particular company, organization, or person with particular information that they would have on you, or you're participating in a service. Let's say you're a company who would buy their products or their services from another company outside of the country. Somebody could intentionally, they try to deceive you, posing as somebody from the company, saying that, hey, we need you to change your, we are changing the account that you pay to. Please send your new payment information to this particular address, email, and then now to facilitate payment. Cases we have encountered would be that persons then just send the new payment account information to the new the new information, the new account in a sense, and just send now their payments to that organization. When they do now try to verify, which is after the fact, the company or the number that they use or the person that they try to contact isn't available, and the money has now gone missing um, to somewhere that they don't know. So you get it from different ways. They try to either steal information, they try to get into your system, and it's really playing the law of averages, that if you target, let's say, 1,000 persons, and you contact them and you send them an email and you try to get them to participate in this phishing scheme, if we get 100 to participate, or 10 even, we may be able to make that variation work. So it's really not about maybe the number of persons they really send the fish to that wide spread of persons, but it's really who would be caught in the context of things. And one of the ways that you could stop that, and you will get into that a little bit lower down, what you could do to kind of protect yourself. Um, Again, this is just really a step through of how the phishing would happen. You would see it would be through an email. They would have a user, sorry, this would work, right? Yes. Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, so you would enter your username and the password on the scam page, so they'll send you an email telling, right, and this happens a lot. You would get an email telling you to update your credentials, whether it's Netflix, whether it's even Disney Plus, and I'm trying to relate it to something that you, or your banking information. And they would tell you just update your account details and need to do that. And you would now click on a link provided in the particular email. You would now go to that email link and enter email information or enter username and password, and then they collect your information. And then now you have now been, in essence, hacked, for want of a better word, and they're acquiring all your information more and more to now either infiltrate some of your other systems, to now be able to either get to your banking information, your personal information, even your account information for these particular services you might subscribe. And then again, this thing, your credit card information, more importantly, is what they're looking for, so that they could cause a scam. And simple as that, clicking an email that really isn't something that you subscribe with. So that'll be one of the things most importantly you must be aware of. If you didn't subscribe to a particular service, or you need to change your password for a particular service, go to the entity's main page itself. Don't use an email link. Try your best not to go to correct any service information on an email link. It really could be more or less suspicious in essence. And again, some of just quickly to run through an anatomy of a phishing attack, that things you need to look at to spot it. You would see here, who is this from? Most times it's from somebody strange that you don't know, you're not aware of, they're not related to anything. At least in this case, you might see it from gmail.com, but then most times you'll see variations in the email from a different email provider or somebody, again, you don't know, email address that you don't know. So you need to pay attention to that. Urgent is always in the subject. There's always saying something happened, something's very important that you need to do. You need to pay attention to those things that seem to be urgent. Generic greeting, they don't know you. Most times a customer or service that you subscribe to may have at least your name that you subscribe with, and may address you for a proper, your correct name, as opposed to just a generalized greeting. So anybody asking you for your credit card number in an email, automatically that should be sent, that should raise a red flag. You should know, I don't need to interfere. I need to just stay away from this, because anybody asking you for your credit card information and to input that really would be suspicious. You don't need to provide that unless you are directly going to provide a service or purchase a service on a particular website, which would have, again, the necessarily controls and implement certain things, like even using a secure payment card provider to now verify your information. So you have to really be very much careful. Do not go to sites that ask you for your credit card information when you really weren't looking for a service and you weren't doing anything. Check before you click. You could also check to see, to make sure that the link goes to the right um, link in essence, or address. So you verify the address, making sure that if you're going to netflix.com, it doesn't say netflixa.com or netflixz.com, and when you realize, okay, that's a variation, because it'll be subtle variations on where you're supposed to go. So if the email comes from sometimes you get this an email from a coworker or a friend, not realizing that they may be using their email, or their email has been hacked in a sense, and they are now using their email address to forward now these spam mail or these phishing mails to you. To now, you have to be very alert on that. And don't, most importantly, anything attachments, please don't open attachments when you get them in very suspicious emails, or in general. Try your best to stay away from opening unexpected or suspicious looking attachments. You really have to just kind of stay alert. So just really looking at 7 signs that you could use to now verify that, okay, this might be suspicious, it might be a phishing email, so you have to be aware. Again, just to run through a different type of scam again, PayPal, and when you realize, if you look at the PayPal address, is really not a PayPal address in essence, or from PayPal service in itself. You see internationalpaypal.com at the top, and then you see ball lappers or lopers at paypalme.com. So you realize that's something very much suspicious. And then in the context of this email, where you have remove your limitation, that is where they try to get your information. So it would actually send you to log into your PayPal account, and then that is what they're looking for. They're really trying to harvest your credentials. So just another way that they could actually, again, another way that they could find that you could be subject or a victim of phishing, or a target of a phishing attack in essence. Again, when you look at the link to where this goes to, it is not a legitimate site. This is, again, most as I say, the link is not correct. PayPal.com is PayPal.com. It doesn't be any variation of such. So you really have to pay attention to the particular services that you need to go to ensure that you are going to the correct link in essence. So just as I said, you receive a suspicious email, appears from somebody that you don't know, trying to reach out on a different email platform, a separate email platform, something it doesn't know. Once it looks fishy, chances are it is. So just to protect yourself as using email and using a digital system in essence, you need to really be alert. social engineering, and we tend to and could be a victim of this for more times than not. And that's really looking at people either targeting you, trying to get some of your information in essence, things they know about you. So you might get some, most likely sometimes they call pretending to be someone that knows you in essence or knows something about you. Again, and trying to go through these means and social media and social sites to really get at your information to now perpetrate attack. We have seen some of these here. The imposters, they call, they would contact you via your phone number. So they have your phone number, they would call you and say that they have an offer for you. They have a problem with their computer, they have a problem with your WhatsApp, they have a problem with you owing some money. You would see these different types of ways that they would try to target you, and either get access to the funds, you'd have to either send them money or sending your banking information. They would either ask them to buy a gift card, which they would ask you to do, or they'd ask you to wire or send money to Bitcoin. Recently, I got a phone call, and the guy was somewhere from. He sounded like he's from maybe Nigeria, and telling me that they have a service that they're offering, and for me to get access. Oh, there's a gift. I have a gift to collect, but I need to send, and all I have to do is pay shipping and handling. And once I collect the gift, they'll be able to send some money for me, but I need to send them now money for the shipping and handling and my bank and account information. So again, they harvest the information from particular places. They would get your phone number because you sometimes you put your especially your cell phone number may be on different websites or different entities. You still have to, if you get a call saying that you either won, got a winner of a prize of any kind, and you have to either pay for it, send money to get it, pay for significant transport, and then you hear that they want you to send your banking information, then you really need to know that once you didn't subscribe, you don't need to be a party to that. Just either walk away, hang up, tell them it's a scam and you don't want any part of it. And you realize when I told the guy that is a scammer that he's trying to scam me, I never got called again. So you just need to be aware and do participate in these things. And you'll be surprised how much people tend to send the money and fall victim to these kind of scams. So just kind of giving you what you need to do, what about these choices. So if you look at these choices, some might look legit, some might look like they're something that you know you would happen to you. And if you read it through, you'd realize, okay, it kind of some of the events may or may not have happened to some of you. You may have encountered cases where someone calls you to say inherited money. You have to wire the back taxes to get it. You have an ad promising a credit card, but you have to wire the money to apply to the credit card. You want to buy something online, the seller tells you instead of paying through your credit card, he wants you to pay. He's telling you to pay by wiring money to him. So you get different variations of the scam, all in the context of trying to get your money, which is really what they're about. And again, you have to be wise enough to know that these are things that I need to stay away from. And as we say, they are all scams in essence. As somewhat legit some might look, they are all scams. So things you could start to do to kind of protect yourself. Stop, check it out before you wire any money to anyone. You call the person, agency, get to contact with somebody at the particular agency. And again, when you do call them, make sure that you get the number from a legit website or legitimate documentation, not from the person who's trying to contact you. Don't send money to anybody who you're not sure they're about or who you're not sure who they are. You need to not send them anything. Generally, I don't know for the Bahamas for sure, but generally, and from what I know, a government agency would never ask you to wire money or pay in Bitcoin. So, that being said, unless it's some official way that they have a channel that they have to facilitate payments. So, anytime they're asking you for Bitcoin, that's an issue or or electronic transactions, that kind of way. Again, share that type of information with your friends so that they will know there's a scam running around and that at the end of the day, not so that they wouldn't fall victim to that type of scam. So it's a wide array of things that could happen to you. Again, so in the context of trying now to protect yourself, we'd go in this direction of passwords. Passwords are one of the ways that you really could use to try and protect yourself in essence. Frustrating numbers, symbols, really guidance is about 16 to 64 characters, and a passphrase kind of is what you would help you along trying to protect yourself. They went from, looking at a passphrase as being safer and more secure in essence. Things to protect yourself: never share your passwords to anyone, change your password when you discover someone is aware of your accounts, um, change your password frequently, never write it down. Avoid using your personal information, in a sense, your date of birth, your children name, their date of birth, pet names, that kind of thing, things that people may be able to overhear or see or read, that kind of thing. Never use passwords for work and your personal accounts to be the same. And try using really passphrases. They're kind of easier to remember when you look at it. So just a little bit of an example here as to what not to do. Doing this is weak password one, the usual kind of simple password for those who kind of find, oh, I have too much passwords to remember. This is a little bit better. It's 10 characters, reasonable strength, but cryptographic hackers can actually still try to find ways around it and hack it. So still, again, a little bit better, but if you want to get something like this, which kind of works, so anything over like 13 characters would start to become now a stronger password. And again, having the characters and a fast passphrase would make it a lot easier for you to protect yourself, and especially when it comes to things like your sensitive information and your financial records. So you need to kind of use that. That would be a better way to go to ensure that you are protected, because one of the things that all of the attackers trying to get to is your username and passwords for all of your various accounts, for your banking, for all of these things that you would use, so that they'll be able to now get into your systems and get access to your information. You can use password managers, and they are proven to be helpful to keep a secure password. So these are just some of the examples of password managers you could use. They could generate new passwords. They could actually generate passwords for you if you don't want to remember, you find it hard to remember a password ever so often. And I know Symmetra made some of the comments as far as passwords and using multi-factor authentication within her presentation. And yes, which is true, multi-factor authentication is very helpful. Is really using two-factor, and most time you would either send an email or a code to your phone to be able to now authenticate your access. And that works both for your personal stuff and for your corporate information systems, wherein that, especially like in a corporate setting where you have administrators and IT administrators or certain applications that are sensitive, having two-factor authentication implemented would really kind of strengthen the security aspect of persons who could access it. So is really a helpful, it at least adds a layer of more security to your information. Importantly, and these are just some things that we need to pay attention to. You have all your devices, your laptop, your tablet, again, organizational devices, the enterprise devices, the firewalls, the servers, the network computers. Everything should have some level of device security in it. Again, we could use, as we would say, keep your devices up to date. Most important, ensure that it's updated. Don't use unlicensed or cracked software, because that could cause, again, a vulnerability where an attacker could penetrate your appliance, your device, and again try to attack you. Again, using a firewall antivirus, ensure that you have antivirus implemented on your, especially your computers and your laptops, that kind of thing. And again, using a host-based firewall for the organizational persons and the technical persons who manage infrastructure. Disabling your third-party outdated components. Again, just different little measures that you need to take to ensure the device that you have is really working at the more optimal level, in essence, one, and again, at a secure level as much as possible. Restrict user permissions, and this would more so be for the network administrators and persons in the organization. Restrict the end user's permission to install and run application software, or the admin privilege, as they would say. Really have to apply least privilege in the context of managing especially enterprise organization. So you really need to have these fundamental policies in place to now protect from a device level. And from security, again, would kind of follow the same pathway. Keep your systems and applications up to date. Don't use unlicensed software. Restricting access to administrators that could cause abuse, because some of the tools that you would use on a network or on your system, an attacker could use them, especially if it's software, especially some of the open source software that you could use, or what we would call free software. You have to be very careful that they don't allow backdoors into your system. So you have to ensure that any applications that you install, especially one at your home at your personal level, and then two at the organizational level, are really secure, trusted applications. And again, and most of the organization, for both the personal use and the organization, again, multi-factor authentication wherever possible. If the application has it built in, try and use it. I think it's really an added level of security that could help. And this is from now the organizational policy. Now we have digital citizens, and we have to the protection of yourself as a person. But then the organization has a responsibility to help protect you in the context of things. So these are some of the things that as a person you could look at, but from an organization, ensure that the organization that you work at may have some policies like this. And those things, if they have it in place, would be able to help protect you as a citizen. Um, an organization should again conduct security awareness training with employees. You must have a business continuity plan in the context of some disaster, cyber attack, even a ransomware attack. What do we do next? How does the business function and continue to function? An incident response plan. Who to call, when to call, and why you should be calling, and how does that procedure go if you want to respond to an incident. The incident happens, I need to contact Symmetra and her organization, or Symmetra has a point of contact in your organization who contacts her to now, deal with an incident. Again, we are sure that the CSIT eventually will, or if they don't already have a line into them at some point, that you could actually call them or be able to email them and send them, look, I have encountered this looking like a suspicious piece of activity. Would you be able to help? So eventually that should happen, but your organization should have a point of contact or a person responsible for dealing with these cyber incidents, and be able to now talk to them. And most times it's the IT person or the IT, the manager or network person. You will have somebody in the organization who is responsible. Data retention and recovery policies, you have rules and responsibilities defined, data classification and categorization, things that would just help now make the organization stronger where information is concerned, um, in terms of how they operate. BYOD policy, yes. Password policy. Then you would start to look at things like um, data protection in essence, which is very much important, and privacy from the perspective that personal information must be protected. So all these little aspects you must look at and consider, things that would help make you a safer digital citizen. At the end of the day, you would want to subscribe to government services, especially in the case of digitization of government services. But they must have the particular, and they should have the prerequisite policies in place, standards, regulations, with the ability to protect your personal information, being your name, your date of birth, your whether it's banking information. In the case where you have to pay for government services, they must protect that information. So at the end of the day, all those are things that would help from both the national perspective, the in essence government, and then coming back to now you as a person trying to protect yourself. So you need to look for certain protective measures in essence, and ensure that once you are cyber smart, it's not just about protecting yourself only. It's ensuring that you are protected by one, you and your in essence your neighbor are being protected by the entities that have the responsibility for protecting you. So things that we could note going forward is contact your national CIT for assistance when and where possible. Be cyber aware again, and that is smart, and having good cyber hygiene practices, and really is about taking care of yourself, doing some of the things that I mentioned before, looking out for ransomware, looking out for, especially for phishing emails, staying away from subscribing links that you really don't know and are familiar with. Um, Again, understanding that those are the things that you could do to protect yourself, having a strong password, using maybe a passphrase, using a password keeper in a sense, multi-factor authentication. All those are things that you need to do to help protect yourself, and all those are really good hygiene practices in essence, or cyber safe practices. I think, yeah, so going in that direction. understanding the value of your information. Because if you do understand the value of one, your information or information in general, it will give you a better understanding of how to protect and why do I need to protect it. At the end of the day, information in essence has worth, has value, and actually can generate significant amounts of money. That is why attackers really target your information and want your information. Google, in essence, is built on information. That tells you, in essence, it's really worth something. And Google targets all types of information, from personal to what you might think mundane, but it is done to generate money. And likewise, any attacker that tries to get access to yours. Think before you click. Ensure that, hey, before I click on this link, I am sure that it's a link that I want to be. It seems to be legitimate, and I wouldn't, there's no risk to me. They are authentic again. To verify the authenticity of the link, chances are don't go through an email if you get the link through an email, unless you subscribe to a service that tells you that, okay, we will now send you an email to now verify whether it's your logo on your username, your password, or to change your password. Then you could click. But outside of that, don't just get a random email from somebody you don't know and then try to click the link to follow it to go anywhere. Ensure that you update your devices and your software, very much important, because at the end of the days, an unupdated or not updated device, how you want to put it, or a device that is out of date in terms of software and its hardware and firmware, can be a window into to your, or a backdoor in essence, as you would say, to present itself to make you a victim. And understanding organization security policies, meaning that if you are aware of the organization's security policies, you would then now perform the actions that are quite necessary for you to ensure that you are safe in your organization. So it kind of ties back hand in hand. You'll protect yourself, you'll protect your organization, you ensure that we all function within the realm of digitization and the new digital trust that we would have as both countries, because in Trinidad we're doing the same thing. We're trying to digitize all our services, and this is fundamentally part of what we will have to do also, ensuring that we have the organizational policies and also that the citizens are aware, trained, and through education and awareness, really understand what they're supposed to do. So that being said, I hope I wasn't too long. Again, this is just the CSID contact information, and again, this is just if you want to keep in contact with us or reach out to us also, there's not really an issue. You can look for stuff we do on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. And again, we are here to help. And again, as Symmetry would be able to say or advocate that, yes, we do try to reach out and help. So again, thanks everyone for listening. I hope it was helpful. Any questions?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Mrs. Smith, for a wonderful presentation. We do have some questions. Demetria, were you going to go ahead?
No, you go ahead.
All right, so your location update, you are still attending the webinar being hosted by the National CERT of the Bahamas, proudly under the banner of the Ministry of Economic Affairs. Mr. Smith, we have a question coming in that's asking you, with the ransomware incidents that you have experienced, can you tell us how the CERT has helped?
All right, in the context of this, no, sorry, let's see how we could cover this. We provide technical assistance in this case, in most of the case, right? So we have had a number of cases. Let me just go back there. Some cases we have gone to the organization after the ransomware attack happened and actually helped them recover their services in essence. Meaning taking them from totally not being able to function to actually back up and running. And in some cases, we would provide either guidance or assistance in terms of how they or their next steps in essence. So a lot of the time, sometimes organizations may or may not report the incident. When we do get wind of the incident, we'll either contact them and try to provide that type of assistance. So generally, both spectrums, we actually try, and then we would either reach out to them also, and then have more this type of awareness. We would have awareness engagement to just kind of educate them on how to function, what they should do, but it's generally both types of services. Because we're incident response, we try to help them respond from the incident and recover. And then also, we would then once we have become aware of an incident like that, a ransomware, we'd have to reach out and put out what we would call alerts and warnings to the rest of the country, in a sense, to be on the alert for these particular attacks. So it's a number of things we would have to do, again, from either helping them recover to now providing that warning aspect of it, and then or providing consultancy guidance information. So it multifaceted. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, we will check with that participant. Excellent answer, by the way, but there's a question that's actually connected to that. When should a scammed individual resolve that there is no solution coming to their incident that they reported? Is there a timeline that may expire, or how should they know within themselves they should not pursue the incident any further?
No, ideally, if they reported an incident to the particular corrective agency, which in this case is the CSID most times, or if you have a police cybercrime unit, you're supposed to get a resolution, in essence, not necessarily that you won't pursue it. At some point in time, it is really that no. And how I'm saying this is that depends on the type of incident. Some incidents may take longer to others because of the level of investigation and the type of incident it may be. But ideally, any organization should actually be able to verify the incident is closed before you say that you could move on to not pursuing the incident anymore. So, a time frame in the why I wouldn't answer you in the why I wouldn't say a specific time frame. It could run from an incident could be resolved in, let's say, a week, 2 weeks, based on the nature of the incident, or it can take long, because some cases where cyber incidents happen, months may happen before we get information, because if there's an international component within an incident, you have to do things like MLAT to get information, to get access to evidence in essence. So it all depends on the degree, the type of incident. For simple incidents, at really within, let's say, at least a month, you should be able to get some type of feedback from the organization reported to be able to tell you, look, this incident is at a certain place with its regular updates, that kind of thing. So they will be able to guide you as to should you pursue it, or should you want to go further, or what is the next steps. It shouldn't really be left that you don't get any feedback and then you just have to drop the incident. No, I don't agree. I don't think that should happen.
Understood. Thank you so much for that response. And the final question coming in, Q&A. Do you think that institutions are doing enough to warn their clients when they are a part of a scam or their institution is being targeted in a scam?
Currently, I don't think so. I mean, and that's worldwide. No, right, let's go back. Some jurisdictions, in essence, would have legislation, or yes, legislation in a sense, or policy that would guide that they are supposed to take corrective actions. One, inform the victims that they were attacked. So you would look at maybe the greater Europe, and then some parts of even now America, where they institute regulations and policies to do that. Generally in the Caribbean, there isn't regulation that advises an entity or instructs an entity to either even inform the victims that they are a victim of attack. Right now, it's just almost voluntary. But I thoroughly think that once an organization has been affected by a cyber attack, it is very much should be an imperative that they contact the victims. But right now, the region doesn't have what we would call, in essence, mandatory reporting, and or which would tie in information protection. So that more so ties back to data protection. Now, going off a little bit, Jamaica and I think maybe Bahamas, Barbados, who just instituted their Data Protection Act, those acts may have the facility to require mandatory reporting in case of an incident. So I would kind of leverage it there, but yes, bottom line is an organization should inform the customers where the information would be either become a issue based on an attack, that kind of thing. They should be informed.
Thank you so much for those responses. Again, excellent presentation. Um, Certainly learning a lot, and I'm sure the other participants are learning a lot as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. That being said, we're going to transition again into another presenter. I will yield my mic at this time to Militia, who will take us into our next presenter. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. We'll have our next speaker, Ms. Shakira Rowe. Shakira has a strong passion for the world of information security, which has fueled her pursuit of excellence in this male-dominated field. In addition to 15 years experience as a cybersecurity professional, she holds an MBA from Georgia Southern University, as well as several internationally recognized information security certifications. In her current role as Director of Information Security at Cable Bahamas Limited, she is tasked with ensuring the alignment of the cybersecurity strategy and the business objectives of the organization. Please now welcome Ms. Shakira Rowe.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and good afternoon, everyone on the call. I hope you are all having a wonderful webinar. I've certainly learned a lot from the first two presenters, and I hope to just add to the information that you're going to gain today. Melissa, will I be sharing, or will you share for me?
You can go ahead and share.
Okay. Pull this up first. And so let me know if you see it okay once I do that. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we
we can
can.
see.
Very good.
All right, awesome. And it's in presentation mode, right?
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Um, let me do this. And please excuse my voice. As you can hear, I am getting over a little cold. It's not the flu, but I'm claiming it as the cold. So I'm going to give you a short and brief presentation, very light. Angus would have given us a plethora of information. Mine is completely going to be different, but there's going to be just one or two lines of overlap. So bear with me. So my presentation is entitled Protecting Our Critical Infrastructure and Essential Services. And as the title says, I'd like to make sure that everyone understands what are critical infrastructure, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the solutions I will propose, and then what is the essential role of public-private partnerships when it comes to securing or protecting critical infrastructure. I don't know if I won't be able to see the chat, right? But I wanted to ask the audience one quick question. So if you had to decide or you had to choose just one critical service that you get on a daily basis, and you had to choose for that to be gone or go away, which one would you choose? So whether that's, your ability to have electricity, your ability to have water, the internet, anyone. So just quickly, if you can, just shoot in the chat. I want to make sure everyone's finger's still working. I know it's almost lunchtime, and you may be, your body may be telling you it's time to go eat. So I just want to do a little exercise with your fingers before I go into my presentation. And I will be honest, I wasn't able to even select one for myself, right? So if those of you who were able to put something in the chat, I commend you. I personally could not put anything because I don't want to lose any of my critical services or any of my luxuries, I call them, right? So critical services or critical infrastructure are the entities that give us key services and functions that I would say are the backbone of our everyday living, right? So when we think of our ability to right now sit on this call, right? It's because there's an internet connection, we have the resources, we have either a phone, a tablet, or some type of device that's allowing us to sit on this webinar. But if the internet was to get disrupted, the entire webinar would be disrupted, and the goals and the education intention or objectives would have been lost, right? So critical infrastructure, just like any other aspect of the government's offerings to its citizens as entities, or as you know, I work for Cable Bahamas. We are a critical infrastructure or critical service provider. We must ensure that we are protecting our services the way that we do in the event of a hurricane, for example. So as a country, we do a very good job of protecting ourselves. When we think of disaster, the first thing comes to our mind are the natural disasters, like the hurricanes that we have to fend against on a yearly annual basis, right? So we do a very good job preparing for those. We know that we have to batten up our houses if there's a potential for one to come, for a storm to be in our area. We know we have to buy additional food, or we have to secure our homes, secure our valuables. But when we think about securing our critical infrastructure, cybersecurity or cyber attack seems to be something that's not top of mind. And cybersecurity is, or cyber attacks can have just as catastrophic an impact on our daily lives if they were to be realized by a critical infrastructure. So I gave some examples of some of the sectors that are considered critical infrastructure: banking and finance, transportation, and that could be ground or aerial, health services, government services, education, telecommunications, and energy. This is not an exhaustive list. There are more, but were some of the more prominent ones I wanted to bring to your attention. And if any of these sectors were to have a major disruption, it would impact us potentially severely. So I wanted to just start off by just getting you to understand the importance of critical infrastructure to our society, and that cybersecurity is a huge element that should be considered when we look at critical infrastructure. Some of the challenges when it comes to cybersecurity, there are three major factors that affect whether it's companies that are individual entities or government. But as a critical infrastructure entity, right? We have challenges as it relates to legacy or unpatched and misconfigured devices. Because the technologies that we use or the services that we provide, let's use cable, for example, the infrastructure was put in years ago. Some of the applications might have been put in years ago. When you look at electricity companies, the same may apply. And it may be a challenge, for us to have dedicated resources that are constantly ensuring that we're keeping these systems up to date. So by us neglecting the care of our devices and our systems, we are leaving our environments vulnerable to cyber attacks. And this is just giving the cyber criminals another foothold or another way to get into the environment. Then when you look at third-party risk, this is also a challenge. Who are we doing business with? As a critical infrastructure company, are we ensuring that we're vetting the vendors and the services that they're providing? Are we ensuring that their staff are whether it is they are managing our customers' information? Are their staff and their processes one that's handling our customers' information with the same due care that we as critical infrastructure companies may provide our customers? When you look at poor asset management and awareness, are you aware of the assets that your companies own? Are you aware of the systems, the different networks, or the different types of devices that are connecting to your environment? These are all avenues or doors in which, if you leave them unprotected, can open yourself up to cyber attacks that can now cause you to be unable to provide the critical services that you're giving to your communities. And I want to shed light on low investment on cybersecurity. So again, cybersecurity has always been the area of risk that companies seem to not look at as important as maybe financial risk or other types of business risk. However, low investment in cybersecurity can result in you not having the correct staff on hand to look at your cyber risk and putting in the right processes and putting in the right policies to ensure that you're handling cyber risk or managing cyber risk at your best ability, ensuring that you're investing in the teams that you may have in training, ensuring that they are constantly keeping up to date or upskilling and they're able to secure your environments properly. So those were four broad areas I wanted to identify as risks and challenges that critical infrastructure entities face today. But there's a lot more. There is a lot more. And so we'll go into some of the solutions. So what are some of the things that critical infrastructures can do in order to reduce their risk of cyber attacks? Angus would have given a lot of details around good cyber hygiene, right? Are we ensuring that our computers and the systems that we're using to manage our services and our products, are we ensuring that they have antivirus software installed? Are we ensuring that they're up to date with the latest operating systems? Are we ensuring that when new software or new technology is no longer used, are we provisioning them? Are we deprovisioning them outside of the environment? Are we protecting the network from, do we have firewalls in place that's going to protect the data that's coming in and out of the network? So those are some basic cyber hygiene elements we need to look at. Are we implementing strong passwords in the environment? Do we use two-factor authentication, right? Angus would have alluded or made mention of LastPass, which is a great password manager. So are we implementing the tools to put in some basic cybersecurity measures to ensure that our companies are secured? When it comes to security awareness and education, this is a major part. The purpose of this webinar is for security awareness and education to be distributed on a national level. So for companies, it needs to be a priority as well. You have to ensure that all of your staff at all levels in the company have the right tools and tips to recognize cyber attacks, and they are equipped with the right information on how to handle. Do they have a mechanism to report cyber attacks or any suspicious activity? Is there a way for them to report phishing? A potential phishing email. These are all attack vectors that we need to show we're educating our staff, again, not only staff that's working on a daily basis with the systems, but the executives, the boards. If you have a board of directors, they must also be trained on proper cybersecurity awareness practices and behaviors. When you look at incident response and planning, do we have a blueprint that outlines what is to be done in the event of a cyber attack? Quick detection, quick response, and quick recovery is the key to coming on the positive side of a cyber attack. We are all susceptible. All critical infrastructure entities are susceptible to cyber attacks, but is how are we preparing ourselves to recover from them? We do business continuity exercises, disaster recovery exercises. Cybersecurity has to be a key element in those exercises. When you look at continuously assessing and managing your cyber risk, do you know where you're vulnerable? Are you performing penetration testing? Are you performing different types of assessments to gauge your maturity as a critical infrastructure entity? How will you know which risk to manage if you did not go through the process of identifying and prioritizing those risks? So those are some of the solutions I'd like to propose for mitigating some of the challenges of the cyber threats that we face. Another element I wanted to bring up is the essential role of public-private partnerships. So I got this quote from the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and it says, "Public-private partnerships are the foundation for effective critical infrastructure security and resilience strategies, and timely, trusted information sharing among shareholders is essential to the security of the nation's critical infrastructure." And I wholeheartedly agree with this statement. It takes collaboration with government and private entities to foster a stronger community, cyber community for the nation. Government have the ability to put in policies, regulations, but we must work with government in order to put in the regulations that would benefit us as critical infrastructure. We must also support government in their initiatives to strengthen the cybersecurity of our nation, because critical infrastructures have the potential to inflict national issues, such as I lost my train of thought. Critical infrastructures have huge impact. So if we were to have an outage, for example, that impacted the entire island or the entire, a certain area of the Bahamas, that could have catastrophic results. And it would take government's support to assist critical infrastructures in becoming more resilient and becoming and being able to recover from certain catastrophic incidents such as a cyber attack. So I wanted to close with that, that it is essential that the public and government work together to strengthen the cybersecurity posture of our nation. So I will entertain any questions you may have now.
Thank you, Shakira, for that wonderful presentation. And you were true to your word. It was brief and definitely high energy. We have a few questions, but we're going to start with what you asked us when you opened your presentation about what we think would be that most critical infrastructure. Some of the responses that came in through the host account, most of them were electricity and water
Big,
as the most important infrastructure. So we wanted to share that with you.
thank you.
Also, out of curiosity, I wanted to know what the National CERT Manager would have to say in response to that opening question from you, Shakira. So, Sabitra, do you care to share what you said was the most important?
Um, Shakira, you're correct. I was unable to find one that I could truly live without, but we recognize and we can appreciate that the government and government services are a part of critical infrastructure. And so I dived into that and I said, one that I can live without is custom duty.
I second that emotion.
Yes. So one that I can live without in the immediate is when they come home, they just say, go through, just pass on through. Okay, so thank you, Shakira.
Okay. Thank you as well.
I think this is where we would say that there is no wrong answer, right? There's no wrong answer to that question.
Right.
We have a question that's coming in from a participant. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this question of you, Shakira. And as far as you're able to respond to this participant, we'll be very grateful. The question reads as thus: Is there any collaborative redundancy plan between the two internet providers that if a coordinated cyber attack happens, both providers have been compromised? Do we have a contact with a satellite provider that will be able to move over to the Bahamas within a 20 to 48-hour period and provide internet services to keep communication open until whatever needs to be done with the providers locally is settled? I don't know
Okay.
if you want me to try read it again to get
I
the
think
gist
I,
of.
I
Mhm,
think I got the gist of it. And
mhm.
thank you. That is a great question. And to answer your question, such an agency does not exist. Such a collaboration does not exist today, to our detriment. And I hope that through some of the initiatives that are coming out of the National Cybersecurity Strategy, we are able to bridge that gap. We are able to look at areas where, as a nation, where critical infrastructure sectors are not working together to provide redundancies for our nation. So to answer the question, no, we do not. And it is my hope that we are moving in the right direction by having these types of forums, that we're able to bring those type of needs to the forefront.
Thank you so much for that response, and thank you participant for that question. It's something I certainly had not thought of until it was asked. So I think that answer and the question benefited all of us in this call. Just one more question before we transition again. And this is not a trick question, Shakira, but who being people, groups, or organizations should not be in the digital space at this time? And in these groups, like who at this time would provide the great or would be the greatest risk in the cyberspace?
Wow, that is a great question. Oh, I don't think there's no right answer for that one either. Everyone's using the internet, right down to my toddler niece and nephews, right up to the older persons in our community. And the catalyst for, I guess, the widespread use of the internet now was the COVID-19 pandemic. So everyone had to find a way to communicate, how to further continue business. And so we open up ourselves in general to cyber attacks just by use of the internet. And you would think that companies or businesses would be more protected, right? But there are a lot of deficiencies when you look at the cybersecurity profile and posture of companies around the Bahamas. That's why security awareness and education is important to be distributed across the entire gamut of digital users. So no one group is more susceptible than others. And you will find that there are a lot of commonalities in terms of risks that all of us are susceptible to. So phishing attacks, for example, we get them on the WhatsApp, we get them on the text messages, we get them via email. And these are all communication medium that businesses use, families use, and we use them for personal use as well as business use, is what I was about to say. So there's no one targeted group. Cyber attackers have different motives. So they may find that attacking kids in the games that they use may be an easy vector, or they may find that there's a business that's using a application where there was a global vulnerability that was published. So they just do a scan to see what all businesses might be using that particular application. So it all depends on what's going on the other side of the attack. You know, what's the motive? What are the tools that they have? So all of us are susceptible. Myself being a cybersecurity professional, I get phishing emails targeted at me. So no one person is more protected than the other, and no one entity is more susceptible than the other, in my opinion.
Excellent. Thank you for that response. That helped me a lot. I was about to go AWOL in the digital world, but I appreciate again that, all of us experience risk
Mhm.
in the digital space. And certainly this webinar, which is under the theme, creating a cyber smart Bahamas through education and awareness. I think we're definitely hitting our theme today with all of the information that's being shared. So that being said, we've had 3 great speakers thus far. I'm going to yield my mic at this time to Melissa yet again so we can get to our final presenter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shakira, again for that wonderful, engaging presentation. Our next speaker is Mr. Edwin Grant. Mr. Grant has been an assistant professor in computer information systems with the Faculty of Business, Hospitality, and Tourism Studies at the University of the Bahamas since 2016. Part of his responsibilities since joining academia is participating in developing the university's new Bachelor's of Arts degree in Information Assurance with a specialization in cybersecurity. He considers himself a public interest technologist keen on establishing relationships with industry and other universities. He has earned numerous industry security certification and holds a Master's of Science degree in Information Assurance from Northwich University, Northfield, Vermont, and a postgraduate diploma in telecommunications law from Strathclyde University, Glasgow, Scotland. He is pursuing a terminal degree in Dakota State University in cyber defense. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Edley Grant.
Good afternoon. See if I can share my screen.
Mr. Grant, we need your speaker. You
Yes,
can't.
can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we're able to hear you. You can
Yes,
go
yeah,
Oh,
ahead.
we're
okay,
hearing you
good.
now.
All right, so let me see if I can share my screen. Now, usually when I do this, things usually go okay. But what we're going to be doing different today is that we have a few demos that I also want to go through. So let me see if I can share my screen and not my PowerPoint. Here we go. All right, you should be able to see my screen.
Yes, we're able to see your screen.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So let's start. Well, the first thing is that we're going to be talking about something called OSINT, which is open source intelligence or open source intelligence gathering. Now, this fits nicely to what the first three speakers were actually talking about, where that when we talk about open source intelligence, what we're really doing is that we're looking at the art and also techniques in trying to gather information about a particular organization or even about an individual. Now, many years ago, OSINT used to be called private investigators, where that you remember when you used to pay someone who used to go about and used to gather information about a particular organization or about a particular company. Well, OSINT is that same process and tactics used, but moved in the 21st century, in which we use the internet in order to gather that information. Now, if you think the amount of applications and the amount of services that you do use and the amount of information that's in those services, that would give you an idea of just how much information is available that's out there for people who know how to get that information to be able to gather it. Now, here is a little bit of information about me and some of my hobbies, but I would basically say that I am nothing more than a glorified nerd, where that I'm interested in technology in most forms, and I always ask the question of why and how. And most of my life, I take that why and how, and I investigate and find out how things work. And also, part of my IT journey was that I've traveled also to 29 countries for developing either data centers or dealing with IT incidents. Now, the first thing we're going to do before I start, because it's going to take a while, is that we're going to use one of my favorite OSINT tools, and this is called Spiderfoot. Now, not only do I like Spiderfoot because it has a cool name, but also Spiderfoot is able to use many different techniques to gather information about organizations or about people in a very easy way that anyone could actually use it. So in other words, you don't have to be an information security professional or even an IT specialist in order to use these tools. So what I've done is that I have opened up one of my Spiderfoot accounts here, and just want to confirm that you can see that. Can anyone
Yes, we
see
can
that?
see it.
Okay.
Yes.
And what I'm going to do now, usually, and by the way, what we're doing here is exactly what I do in my classrooms, where that we actually go through these tools in certain courses that we have. Now, usually we would do scans of domain names and then we would see what type of information we can extract. But because, this is a live demonstration, I will risk it and use my name, where that we will do a scan of all information that can be found on the name of Verdley Grant. Now, I haven't done this before, so I'm just hoping that nothing embarrassing is going to come up. And the reason why I'm doing it before we actually do explain it is because of the limited time that we do have. So I placed in here what I want to scan, and it's going to be the name Verdley Grant. Now, you have to remember that even though I'm going to be putting in a name here, This could be a domain name, this could be an IP address, this even could be a phone number. And what Spiderfoot will do is that it will use many different services that are out there. Some of them are actually keyed where that you have to pay for them, but it will gather as much information as possible about those target entities. Now, usually when you do this run, it would usually take close to about, oh, anyway, look like one of my scans are gone here. Of course, it should happen, but I have here a little demo of a scan that was already done. And this right here was against a person. And the person's name was, let me just get it here, Steve Michael. And this is the information that we found on Steve Michael. Here we have an accounts, all the accounts that Steve Michael was associated with. So in other words, if Steve Michael had, let's say, a Facebook account, if he had a Twitter account, if he had, let's say, a LinkedIn account, this would be able to scan and find all of that information. And so here he had an account for Vino, for Pinbike, for Wattpad, for Axe.fm, and it goes on and on. Now, why is this important? Well, this is important because as an organization or a person, you want to ensure that the amount of information that's available about you on the internet is limited, because they can use this information, attackers, in order to create profiles that they then can use in order to create targeted attacks, either using social engineering or, more importantly, through malware email accounts. And so it's important that companies and organizations are aware of just how much information is out there about them. Now, the first thing is that we cannot stop all information about ourselves being on the internet, but there is a difference. There are two types of information that are out there, those that are publicly available and those that are publicly exposed. What we mean about publicly available is that this is information that a person or an entity intentionally left out on the internet. That would be things like blog postings. That would be things like your email addresses. That would be things like any sort of public announcement that you do have. This would be information that you want the public to be able to consume. Now, while that information may be interesting for an attacker to use, because what they want to do is that they want to create a profile about your interests, things that you want, things that you do, places that you go on a regular basis. Now, the other part of it is publicly exposed information. Now, that would be information that is publicly available to the internet that takes a little bit of searching, a little bit of research to get, but it's going to be information that as an organization or as an end user, you do not want that information out. And it's absolutely amazing the type of information, if you have the proper tools, that you can actually get from the internet. Take, for example, organizations that have a website. And for people that manage websites, we all know that there's a particular file in these websites that control how search engines like google.com or bing.com, how they actually search your websites. Well, a lot of organizations would put this information into a file called robots.txt. Now, that robots.txt is freely available, so anyone on the internet can look up that file and to see exactly what you do not want the rest of the internet to see. And as an attacker, if you see that, what you would do, let me just put in this URL, this website, and see if, yes, you not want people to know, but have you really protected that part of your website? And the surprising thing is that there are many companies that do not protect that. And so just by looking at this robot.txt file, you are able to get to exactly where organizations do not want you to see. Now, when we talk about OSINT, one of the things and it always comes up in the class, is that, is running these OSINT tools legal? Well, if you look at the Computer Misuse Act of the Bahamas, this is what it says. Any person who without authority knowingly causes a computer to perform any function for the purpose of securing access to any program or data held in any computer shall be guilty of an offense. That's a lot to say. But the question is, does that really help when you have people doing these scans? Well, yes and no. Anything that touches a computer system or accesses any service of the computer system will be in violation of this act. Now, that would be using any sort of active recon attempts, like the best one that's known is something called Nmap, but there are many, many other tools that would give you very good information about the profile of sites and domains. That would be covered underneath this act. Also, if you pull up a website and you just wanted to guess and see if you can log in on it, that would also be covered underneath this act. And if you got into a computer system and you started to pull data out because it is causing your computer to perform some sort of function, that would also be covered under that act. So far, so good. However, you have to remember that we have these programs that are floating all around the internet that you as an organization has explicitly allowed to scan and to retrieve information. And these are those items that are used in order for your website to be linked to Google, to any of the other search engines that are out there. And these are just a few of the search engines that are being used. So the question is, if you query information that was gathered through using these spiders and these web crawlers that you explicitly have given permission in order to scan or to retrieve information from your website, is that really illegal? And it's a question that we have to really look at because we're getting more and more of these bots that are out there that are scanning our systems and our devices in order to create a profile that's being publicly used. And by the way, this is not anything nefarious. As you can see here, Google, Apple, and many, many other services use these bots in order to gather information. So what we're doing is that we are just using this publicly available information and utilizing that in any way that we feel fit. Now, this is another part of the act. Any act which contributes towards causing such modification shall be regarded as causing it. So what that means is that by using these bots and using the information from the bot, does that mean that you are still guilty of using the Misuse Act? And then does that mean that Google, Apple, and all these other large companies that use these bots, are they also violating our Computer Misuse Act? And that's one of the interesting things is that as we move towards in technology and we start to use a lot more services, things start to get gray and it's not really black and white. Now, this is one of the demos that we're going to do. Now, the first demo that we kind of showed you was an all-encompass site that would go ahead and scan information about services that you're using and you personally. But you also have to remember that with OSINT, you can also find out information about particular devices that are connected to the internet. And one of the biggest ones out there is something called Shodan.io. Now I will pull up here our Shodan account. And here we can type, let me make sure that I'm logged into my account. Okay, I'm logged in. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do a search to see exactly how many computer systems are connected to the internet and are exposed to the internet that's located within the Bahamas. Now, it does this through geolocation and also by IP addresses. So let's do a scan. Well, not a scan, but a query. And let's see. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so what I see here is that we have almost 20,000 computer devices that are connected to the internet within the Bahamas. And you notice here that it gives us a lot of information about those devices. And it does this by doing a query. And if it receives some sort of login banner, it would then record that login banner. So here I can see not only the IP address of the systems, I can see here which ISP that is connected to, which is Cable Bahamas. And here I can see the type of Linux system, including the Linux version. And if there is a login that's allowed, this would also allow you to click on to get a login screen. Now, of course, I won't do that, but anytime you see this little green, this little red arrow sitting here, if I click on that, it would actually bring up a login screen. And so you can do filters on the host, you can do filters on even the type or even the operating systems that's actually running on it. Now, let me see if I can pull up. Just kind of get here to the query. And because we're kind of late, I'm going to pull this one. Sorry, I'm going to pull this up so that we can take a look at it real quick. And what this does, excuse me, too many screens, is that if I go to Explore, and you notice here that these are all pre-queried scans that we can do. And we have one here called Internet Observer. Let's take a look at this. How exposed to the internet is your country? What is the most common vulnerability? Get a high-level view of the internet using this. So let's click on it and let's see what happens. It's going to give me a list of all the countries. Now remember, Shodan has already done an enumeration of all the IP addresses within a particular country. And so here, let's click Bahamas and here. So here, all of the computer systems that we have that are connected to the internet, we have here that we have 20,171 ports open. For those that don't know what a port is a way in which an application can be received, and an application can also service information to the clients who are out there. So in other words, this is saying that there are 20,171 ports that are open on these servers. And here in the middle, we have a list of all of those ports that are open. Now, getting this information could be valuable to, let's say, an attacker, because an attacker can then say, okay, if this is port 554, I know that 554 would usually have X application running. And if it knows that, then it's better able to target that particular application. Now, here at the top is the most important thing that we have here, that not only Shodan does a scan of every single device, regardless of what the device is. So if you're talking about a cable modem, if you're talking about your phone, if it's exposed to the internet, Shodan will capture it. And what Shodan also can do is that it can take that information that it gathers, and then it can do a comparison to these vulnerability databases. And in this case, it has said that the top vulnerability in the Bahamas is this particular vulnerability here, CVE 2017-7269. So remember now, this is not a hypothetical. Shodan has done that scan, and it knows that which systems that are exposed to the internet are vulnerable with this vulnerability. So what that means is that you are able to then look up that vulnerability. And usually when these vulnerabilities are cataloged, they would usually also include an exploit payload. So because we have a CVE, all I have to do is do a search for the exploit payload, and then I can attack this system. Now remember, this is not one system. This is a whole bunch of systems that are out there. Now, let me just make a copy. I'm not going to run it, but I'm just going to show you because I don't want this seen. But if I go here back to Shodan, and I type VULN colon and this, and if I hit then country, BS for Bahamas, if I hit search, this would give me a list of every single exposed server in the Bahamas that is vulnerable to that exploit. Of course, for various reasons, I'm not going to run it, but this is how easy it is. And once you have it, listen, by the way, it's about 40 to 50 computer systems, servers out there. And if I was a malicious person, all I have to do is just look up the vulnerability, find the malware code that's associated with it, the payload code, and execute it. And guess what? I got your server. It is that easy to do using the tools that are publicly available. All right, so that's our Shodan. Excuse me, let's kind of move on. And now one of the biggest things that have happened over the last, I would say, 6 to maybe 7 years is that it's this availability of something they call stealer logs. Now, stealer logs are what usually would happen, or usually what they would get if a computer system has been infected. Now, we know that we all know about malware, how dangerous it is, and how it locks up data for individuals and for organizations. However, what a lot of these organizations, these attacking organizations have found is that, yes, they can make some money off malware, but the problem with malware is that once that infection has been executed, they have lost control of that network or that computer system. So what they've started to pivot to do is by using these things called stealer logs. And what a stealer log is that it's an ability of an infected computer system to continuously transmit information to some sort of consolidated database in the background. Now, what this will do is that this will collect information about your browsing habits. It will collect information about your passwords that are being used. It would collect information about your websites that are being visited. It would also collect information about the files that you have stored locally on your computer system. Now, when I say that this thing is growing, it is growing exponentially. Like right now, there are tens of thousands of these stealer logs that are out there that can contain up to 3 terabytes of information about end users and organizations. Now, what are they doing with this? Well, just like everything else on the internet, they're selling it. However, there are many of these stealer logs that are publicly available that if you know where they are, you can attach to them and you can read them. Now, fortunately, a lot of these logs are not on what we would call the internet that you know of, meaning that you can go in and do a Google search. Most of these logs are available on an alternate website or what they call a torrent. So if you put in a torrent address, you can probably do a search and find some of these publicly available stealer logs. Now, exactly what these stealer logs contain, this is a typical log that was obtained from one of the stealer sites called Redline Stealers. And you can see the information that they have available on this particular computer system. It has a hardware ID. Now, that hardware ID is a unique ID that is generated and created whenever you install Windows. And so this is a unique ID that's going to identify that computer system no matter where it is in the world, right? Also, because I said that the attackers that usually grab this information want to sell it. So they would usually have a small text file that would have information on the attacker and where they can be contacted if you wanted to buy this. And here we have autofills. So if you have a browser and you're using the autofill on that browser, and it is from the browser itself and not using one of the third parties, like the password managers, all of that information that you have within the autofills is contained within the browser itself. And what this malware would do is that would grab all that information. Now remember, this is not grabbing information at one time. It is going to be continuous. It will also grab all of your cookies that you have on, which would be trackers to not only your applications you're using, but also to get to remember that a lot of the banking or a lot of the private sessions that you do have that you log in with, in order for you to stay connected while you are actually doing the sessions, it's going to generate something called a session cookie or a token. And as long as that token is there, you will be authenticated to the site. That's why every time you hit enter, you do not have to re-enter your password. That information is also sent up. Now, while it's limited where that those cookies or those keys will only be effective as long as you are logged in on the site, can you imagine if you had a person who was very interested and wanted to do a target attack on a particular person? And once they logged in on their banking account and they then received this token that would authenticate that particular session, all the attacker needs to do if he's watching real time is to grab that token, embed it into their browser, and then they can then log in on your account. And they can do whatever you can do in your account as long as they're logged in. Once they log out, then their session ends. But you have to remember that this is also continuous. And here, one of the reasons why it's never a good idea to store your passwords in a browser is that these stealer logs can also grab that too. And here at the bottom, which I did not highlight, depending on the malware, they can even take screenshots of what you actually have on your screen. And this information, while usually it's restricted and it's sold, there are numerous, including this particular Steeler site, Redline Steeler, that's publicly available. Now, you won't have access to the entire log file, but they do kind of give you a sample of the information that they do have. So can you imagine what you can do with this if you had malintent? But the good thing is that with the proper tools, you can also be able to identify any information that you may have on the organization or personnel within the organization in these logs itself. And the most popular one, get here, is have I been pwned? Now, I'm sure that you've probably heard about it. If not, I strongly suggest go to the site and put in your email address or any well, usually just the email address. I wouldn't really suggest putting in the phone because usually it doesn't work. But then what this will tell you is that it would tell you whether that email address was involved in any breach within the last 15 years. And if it is found, then you know that what type of appropriate action that you can take. Now, have I been pwned is not a substitute for some of the more dark web stealer sites out there, but it is one that's absolutely safe to go to. And matter of fact, it's one that even Apple uses in some of its security profiles for end users. So I strongly recommend put in your email and see what happens. Now, I've done this a number of times, and this is my own personal email. The reason why I'm using this is that I know the results are going to happen. So let me put in eardley.grant@outlook.com. And have I been pwned? Yes, I have. So here, that means that this email address has been found in some of the stealer logs that are out there, which probably means that my passwords that I've used is also contained. Now, if you scroll down, this would actually tell you the two sites that was compromised and my email address was part of it. And yes, I do have accounts with these two. The first one was Adobe, and this breach occurred in 2013. And in this case, 153 million accounts were breached. And this last one here was Nitro, which just happened in 2020. And my email address was also compromised in that. So if you see something like that, the first thing you need to do is change your password. So I would strongly encourage, if you really want to see what your profile is out there, at least get a taste. Use some of these tools out there, especially Have I Been Pwned. Okay, and here these are other search tools that you can use. The best one, other than the all-encompassing suite that we talked about before, which is Spiderfoot, would be this. And this right here is from an OSINT site that was actually developed by the author. And what happened is that this right here, you can actually search individual items that we have here, where that these are search tools that you can do special searches on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can do email addresses, usernames, names, even addresses, phone numbers. You can even do maps. Now, the interesting thing with this map, when it's combined with images, is that you can grab an image, especially one that's out on the internet, and then you can geolocate where that person was when they took that picture. And the reason is because 99% of people that have cell phones and take pictures do not disable the GPS information that would be embedded within the pictures themselves. So remember, every picture that you've taken, if you have not disabled that and you've uploaded it to, let's say, WhatsApp or to Facebook or Instagram, any one of those items, that information is still embedded, which means that anyone with the proper tools can be able to grab that image and be able to find out where you were and when that image was actually taken. And so, again, I would encourage you if you could, because these tools are safe. I use these tools all the time in my classes as an example. But of course, for various reasons, I can only show you that I don't want to do any sort of searches because, sometimes it's kind of scary, things that kind of pop up. For example, we were doing a test using Shodan. And I didn't show it here, but then you can also do a scan for any open computer systems that use remote access, and also for any cameras that are out there, physical cameras. And once we were doing a scan, and well, first, the way that Shodan works is that if it senses and it can tell that it's a camera, uh, what it will do is that it will take a snapshot, and then it will show you the snapshot. Now, if you want to see an actual video, you would then click on that red, and then it would automatically connect you where that you could watch the video live. But of course, doing that would be a violation of our acts. So we don't do that, but it does give you a snapshot. We did a search of snapshots. I can't remember, it was a particular type of webcam, and we put in .bs. And when we scrolled through, of course, we saw the usual shots of people's garages, of cars, of security cameras. But there was also one that we caught that someone had one of these vulnerable cameras in their house pointed to their side door in their kitchen. And the snapshot was of someone in the kitchen cooking dinner that was completely open to the internet. So these tools are powerful, and these tools, if anything, it would encourage a lot of the things that they spoke about before. But in this case, I'm putting it more in a practical way of why you should have strong passwords, why all the devices in your computers that you have should be up to date, and check to make sure that they don't have any sort of vulnerabilities. And again, is this anything that we've done that required some sort of high-end computer sciencey stuff? Did you have to be an expert information security specialist to be able to grab that information? No, because the tools are out there that allow you to do it. Now, mind you, some of the tools that we do have we can go a lot deeper than what we've shown here. But this is something that anyone who is here in the seminar can easily do. So imagine the capabilities of the people that have more customized tool and more way of accessing this, and the type of information that not only that they can gather, but the type of information that they can actually view. Okay, and this right here was that site that I showed you that had all of the individual tools that you can use and gather and kind of look at. Okay. Any questions?
Good afternoon. And we are on the other side of 4 amazing presentations. I think we are armed with a wealth of information. Mr. Grant, thank you so much. I think I spent the entire time of your presentation just being in shock at what is out there. We do have one question we're going to ask you. We're over time here, so we're going to try and wrap up a little speedily. Thank you all for your patience thus far. The question, sir, is what information should never be provided online? Meaning, if this information is required to open an account, that the user should opt out of signing up for that portal or that service. What information should never be provided online?
Well, to be honest, just like everything else, it depends. You're going to find that if not currently available, just about every service that you're going to be using at one point or another is either going to be online or it's going to be in some sort of electronic or digital form. So even if these items are not stored, let's say in a cloud database, it's going to be stored in some sort of server that's going to be local. And if that server is compromised, well, that information is automatically going to be in the cloud. Now, so it really depends on the trust that you have on the organizations that you're actually inputting this information. Now, if it's some sort of low-hanging fruit, let's say that if you want to purchase something from some sort of one-off store, if it's asking for personal information, give it personal information. Just remember that the site never says that the information has to be truthful. And you're going to find that that's one of the biggest things that you also see is that you find people who really have, I wouldn't say an understanding, but they do have an awareness of the privacy and awareness of what can happen, that you're going to find that many, many times that when they go to sites and those sites ask for information, they never, ever give true information because the only thing that site really is interested in is your email address. Everything else is something that eventually, depending, of course, on the organization, that they're going to prepackage and they're actually going to sell. And by the way, I did not even mention part of the most scariest parts is part of the internet industry called data brokers. But we'll save that for another time.
Thank you. That response certainly helped. I hope it helped all of us. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to yield my mic to National CERT Manager, Sumitra McKinney, as she transitions us to the conclusion of this wonderful webinar. Sumitra?
Thank you, Anishka. Thank you so much for moderating. At this time, I just want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time to be here with us, participate. Thank you for your questions. I want to thank the speakers as well as all of those who've made this event successful. As promised, I promised some resources at the end of the event, and these are some resources that you can use to take home with you. We've also added them in the chat so that you can easily access them. These are basic cybersecurity awareness tips. They're related to things on how to protect children online. These are good for parents specifically. And I have a real passion for protecting the most vulnerable digital citizens. And so we are just leaving this, we're going to leave this on the screen. You can capture it as well as access it through the chat. Again, thank you all. And I'm going to pass it on the mic to Militia, who will give our final and official thank you address to all of you. Okay, Militia?
Good afternoon, and we are at the end of the webinar. We want to take this time to thank our dynamic team of a group of speakers. Our very own Mr. Mija McKinney, the National CERT Manager, Mr. Agus Smith, the CERT Manager for Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Shakira Rowe, Director of Information Security for Cable Bahamas, and Mr. Grant, Professor from the University of the Bahamas. We want to thank you all for taking time out of their busy schedules to provide informative, engaging, and very vital presentations to us. We thank you again for helping us promote cybersecurity awareness in our community. I'm sure most of our participants have benefited from what you've shared. We would like to thank our team, our National CERT team for the coordination of the event, and communications team for getting the word out. Thank you. And last but not least, we want to thank you, our stakeholders, constituents, and special guests for attending. Again, we hope that you had some valuable takeaways, and we ask that you continue to partner with us as we work together to create a cyber smart Bahamas. Good afternoon, all.
Engage stakeholders by hosting
Some of the benefits of a national CERT are you now have a trusted body for coordinating cybersecurity incident response.
the National CERT plans to engage its stakeholders by hosting cybersecurity exercises and drills, cybersecurity training, and providing annual reports.
Organizations and the public will now have the support and guidance on how to handle cyber incidents. One of the key benefits is education and training, which aims to foster cybersecurity awareness throughout the community.
Hi, I'm Demetria McKinney, and I'm the National CERT Manager. The National CERT is a computer incident response team, and it serves as the focal point to coordinate cybersecurity response to both the public and private sectors.
We aim to increase and protect the constitutional rights of Bahamian digital citizens. One of our main goals is to increase the country's cybersecurity posture through the development and deployment of early warning systems to proactively identify as well as manage cyber risks.
So the country is impacted by all cyber threats. No country or no person is immune from cyber risk, especially if you're a digital citizen. And so some of the common ones that you will see would be things like malware, ransomware, breaches. You're probably familiar with things like phishing, social engineering, espionage. However, it really boils down to unauthorized access to cause harm. And we are all impacted, or we are all vulnerable as digital citizens to that.
So in joint CERT SOC community meetings, what we aim to do is we hope to bring all the different CERTs or SOCs that we have in the Bahamas and engage them through conversations, communication on the different or various topics that we may have. SOC stands for Security Operations Center. It's essentially like watching a CCTV footage, but you're looking at digital information. So you're looking at logs, you're looking at traffics, alerts, that kind of thing.
Well, first of all, it's a very serious and serious organization, and it provides so many benefits for the public. They have a place that if they're not familiar, if they're not aware of what are some of the issues involved and threats and vulnerabilities, they have a place, they have a repository where they can gather information and even get, assistance.
What's important to note is that warning helps us advise or alert our constituents of an event that may be happening or one that has happened or about to happen. And we want to make sure that we're giving our constituents the tools to appropriately respond to those types of events before it happens, or a way to contain a disaster or a potential breach from happening.
I'm a bit excited about it because I find that a lot of persons don't take cybersecurity serious, and I've worked with so many persons and I see that they don't take it very serious. Given the role that I had to play in, previous employment, it was a struggle for me to get people to, see the importance of it. So seeing the importance of cybersecurity, not just, in their workplace, but in their lives in general.
I'm excited about cybersecurity generally, but one of the things that's most exciting about this project is the opportunity for change. The establishment of the National CERT and the implementation of the National Cybersecurity Strategy will drive change for cybersecurity in the country. More importantly, it will help to improve our overall cybersecurity profile. But what I want as Demetria McKinney, I want to build capacity in this country. I want cybersecurity, and by extension, cybersecurity education to be a part of every digital citizen's life. I want us to talk about cyber risk in everyday conversation, because ultimately what we're doing here is creating a space for a safer Bahamas so that we are able to work, go to school, live, shop, communicate, interact. And my hope is that these initiatives do just that for all digital citizens in the Bahamas.